And now, a Scared for Reals Extra.
Hey, it's Chris O'Neill. Adam Perry is off this week. I just wanted to discuss the new Blink Twice movie that just opened up in theaters, directed, co-produced, co-written by none other than Zoë Kravitz. Yeah, that's Lenny Kravitz, Lisa Bonet's daughter, Zoe. Remember her? She was Catwoman a couple years ago in the Batman movie. She was also in Mad Max Fury Road. This is her directorial debut, and apparently she's been working on this since 2017. Now, before I go further, subscribe to Scared for Reals on YouTube so you never miss an episode. You can also reach out, comment, tell us what you think about Blink Twice on Facebook, Instagram, X. Our handles are at Scared for Reals. But yes, spoiler alert, because we're going to be discussing the entire film from start to finish. Not only do you have Zoë Kravitz, her directorial debut, but you have quite the all-star cast. You have British actress Naomi Ackie. Now, you might not be familiar with the name, but I know you've seen her. She was Whitney Houston a couple years ago. Remember that biopic? Also, she was Jannah in Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. She's still coming into her own, and later on, next year, she's going to be an Oscar winner Bong Joon-ho's sci-fi film with Robert Pattinson. Mickey 17 is the name of that one. That's one I'm looking forward to. I didn't have any expectations going into Blink Twice. I don't know much about Zoë Kravitz other than that she's Lenny Kravitz and Lisa Bonet's daughter, and she was in Fury Road, and she was pretty decent as Catwoman in the Batman. So let's talk about the plot here, because it's quite a doozy. Let me tell you, if you think you know what's going to happen at the end, Zoë Kravitz pulls a lot of Hitchcockian twist here. The story follows a couple of best friend roommates. Naomi Ackie is Frida. She's a nail artist. And you also have her friend Jess, who's an aspiring actor. They somehow work their way into a catering gig at a fundraising gala for this elite billionaire, Slater King, played by Channing Tatum. Talk about going against type. Channing Tatum definitely does that here. I guess he's some sort of head for a tech company. I should say former CEO, because he's shown right at the opening of the movie apologizing for some sort of unnamed indiscretion, but he assures the public that he sought help for his behavior through therapy. And by stepping down from his position as CEO, he isolates himself on a private island. Seems like it's going to be okay, but we're going to find out later on that unnamed indiscretion is something pretty major. Best friend roommates, Frida, Jess, they get to cater a gig at one of his fundraising galas. And it seems like Frida, again, brilliantly portrayed by Naomi Ackie, seems kind of smitten with Channing Tatum's character, Slater King. They become friends. They really are hitting it off with each other quite a bit. They're having drinks. And somehow, her and her best friend, roommate Jess, get invited to join him for a trip to his private island. And the two accept his invitation, and boom, we're off to the races, so to speak, because this is where the story takes a drastic turn. And I shouldn't say drastic, it's a slow burn. This movie builds and builds on tension, suspense, a lot of little details that Zoe captures that lead to bigger things later on in the movie. So the two women find themselves along with a handful of other young men and women. There's a lot of partying going on, and I must say, this island, such an awesome place to be. This is like a dream island that anyone would want to escape to. You know what I mean? It's just beautiful. You don't know where the island is, but it's secluded. It's cut off from everything, and apparently no phones allowed, so all the young men and women have to hand over their phones. So let's talk about the cast here before we go any further with a plot, because the cast is quite impressive. Zoe's directorial debut, I mentioned Channing Tatum as the elusive billionaire with a secret pass. You have Oscar-nominated actor Haley Joel Osment from The Sixth Sense, Christian Slater. You have Simon Rex, Kyle MacLachlan from Blue Velvet, and Oscar-winning actress Geena Davis, who plays the part of Channing Tatum's sister. Very interesting cast, and they all get their moments to shine in this film. So the two women, they're having a lot of fun with these other young men and women. They go down a rabbit hole of drugs, alcohol, all sorts of debauchery. It just kind of time just keeps passing by. There's a lot of little details that kind of build and build and build. So you got to pay attention to what's going on. So the girls are treated with these lavish rooms, gifts, bags of perfume, a luxurious, carefree holiday experience enhanced by these high-end meals, cocktails, and of course these potent hallucinogenic drugs. And again, it seems like there's going to be a love triangle between one of the young women named Sarah and Frida, because they both seem to be kind of clashing over Slater's affections, Channing Tatum's character, while Jess, her roommate, her best friend, notices lapse in her memory. Now, Frida also notices that the local workers on Slater's Island all sport the same snake tattoo on their forearms. Again, Zoë Kravitz bringing out these little minute details that pay off later on. So Channing Tatum explains that the workers are culling wild snakes which have multiplied on the island. Frida also has strange encounters with one of the maids who seems to recognize Frida from the past and calls her Red Rabbit. And she has no clue on why. Later on, we'll find out. So Kyle MacLachlan plays the part of Channing Tatum's therapist. He visits the island briefly, and Frida recognizes him from the earlier cocktail where he jokingly told her to blink twice if you're in danger. So hence the title of the movie thrown out there yet again, blink twice if you're in danger. Channing Tatum gives Kyle MacLachlan a gift in a red bag. And during a night of partying and drugs, Frida's best friend Jess is bitten by a snake. And it seems like Jess is spooked about this, and she starts confessing to Frida that she wants to leave the island, but Frida brushes off her concerns. And she's kind of upset because at the beginning of the movie, she's kind of told by her employer to be invisible and not make too much of a presence and all that kind of stuff. So she's kind of had to just kind of be in the background, it seems. So this is her moment to shine. She seems to be loved by this billionaire, which is definitely something that she's always wanted. After Jess's confession, the next day, Jess goes missing, but none of the group seems to notice. So while the men are away on a fishing trip, Frida discovers a room where there are dozens of identical red gift bags. So again, all these little details are adding up here. She is tricked into drinking the snake's venom by the maid she's been encountering. Again, this maid somehow recognizes her, and she doesn't know why. After she drinks the snake's venom, things start coming back to Frida. So the snake venom is an interesting plot twist here. So at this point in the story, Frida can't seem to understand what happened to her best friend Jess. She thinks that something might be afoot as well. And then she runs into Sarah, the other woman who's been kind of competing for Slater's affections. They meet up. She becomes suspicious as well. So Sarah and Frida start working together and try to find out what may or may not be happening to them, because they're getting kind of suspicious at this point. And they kind of blame themselves. They accepted this invitation to join men they don't know on a trip to this remote island, middle of nowhere. And of course, when her best friend Jess gets bitten by a snake the night before, they need a doctor, and there's nowhere to be found because they're on this remote island. Apparently, there's no doctor around. So going back to the snake venom, Frida has some, and then she starts remembering things, and she tells Sarah to drink some as well. Because at this point, they're kind of working together here to try to have a good time, pretend, so they can kind of be self-preservationists, if you know what I mean. So they decide to secretly dose the other woman. They mix it into some drinks. They, again, get drunk, hammered, all of that stuff. They even include Channing Tatum's sister, Gina Davis. They give her some of the snake venom in hopes they will soon regain their memories and work together to find a way off the island. So at this point, the men return from fishing as Frida and Sarah grow more and more paranoid that something terrible has happened to them that they can't remember. So Frida sneaks into Slater's office to retrieve their phones, only to find they are out of power and service, as they've been there for probably a few days now. The office is wide open, but she notices this cabinet that's locked. So she breaks into it, She sees all of these Polaroid photos, so she kind of gathers them really quickly. Sarah gives Frida a signal that the guys are coming in, including Channing Tatum, so she has to try to get as much photos as she can. And just so you know, some of these Polaroids feature different women along with men with red gift bags, revealing that King is inviting male guests to the island as well. So as she's hiding from Channing Tatum, Gina Davis, the rest of the guys who are just outside talking, she starts remembering. And these memories are not very pleasant. Her memories reveal the men have been sexually assaulting them every single night and then wiping their memories using the flour. When Jess's memories wouldn't wipe due to the snake venom, they killed her. And later on, she actually finds a photo of herself with longer hair and different nails than the one she has on. And guess what? Those nails have red rabbits painted on them. Remember when the maid kept on calling her Red Rabbit? So she puts the pieces together. She realizes she's been here before, and this is not the first time she's been subjected to being sexually abused on this island. So imagine having all of these memories coming back that you've been sexually tortured every single night. I just can't imagine how this feels. It's quite a doozy. You know something is going wrong on the island, but you never would suspect that these guys were doing this to the women, torturing them that way. But yeah, there are hints throughout the movie. Her conversation about memory repression with Slater. Forgetting is a gift. That's something that Channing Tatum often says in the movie. The red lipstick she finds in her drawer, the scar on her left eye, and Vic's missing pinky finger. Yeah, the revelation further fuels Frida's rage and motivates her to seek revenge. So at dinner time, Frida and Sarah, they try to buy some time for themselves. And Channing Tatum at this point knows something isn't right because Sarah starts giving a speech about how women are often pitted against each other as competition and that they should be supporting one another. It seems like a poignant revelation happening in real time. But yeah, this dinner starts a lot because the women start actually remembering. The other women on the island start remembering what has happened to them during their time as well. And literally all hell breaks loose at this point. The movie's been slowly building the tension, the suspense. You're wondering what's going to be happening next. So the women attack their abusers in a sequence which has got a lot of grisly revenge and violent. Thankfully, it wasn't as violent as I thought it was going to be, although there are some doozy sequences. I mean, the men are brutally killed, and they show some of the damage done to themselves, mutilated by the women they victimize. You kind of want to cheer them on, but it's kind of a grisly revenge sequence here. So you have a suspense, thriller, satire, and at the same time, you have this grisly revenge film as well. But of course, Channing Tatum traps Frida in the villa, and it's revealed that not only was she invited to the island a year prior and experienced the same events, she definitely has vivid memories of this in quite a revealing flashback sequence, to say the least. And then the big monologue from Channing Tatum, he laughs off his recent apology and states that forgetting is better than forgiveness before leaving to retrieve Sarah, who's out there. She's killed some of the guys at this point. Now, while Slater is gone, Frida laces his vape with the flour, the flour that makes them forget, right? So as Slater prepares to kill Sarah, the vape's effects start making him forget the previous events and causing him to panic upon seeing the bodies. So Channing Tatum slips and knocks himself unconscious as the villa catches fire. Frida and Sarah escape, leaving Christian Slater's character to die. I mean, he's not in good shape anyways. But yeah, the whole villa just burns. Along with Gina Davis, Channing Tatum's sister, she gets stabbed earlier on in all of the chaos that exhumes here. So the villa burns with all of what's left of the corpses of the bad guys inside as Sarah and Frida kind of reflect on things. And then fast forward, this is like the epilogue of the film. Sometime later, the same exclusive event at the beginning of the film, which set the plot on course, you see Channing Tatum's therapist, Kyle MacLachlan, who also assaulted Frida on the island, says hello to Slater, who's noticeably more disoriented than usual. It's revealed that Frida has now married Channing Tatum and assumed his position as CEO, all while drugging his vape with a flower to keep him compliant. Interesting turn of events, as the event's guests are there to congratulate Frida. Kyle MacLachlan's character is arrested. Now, the story does have a somewhat satisfying end. You see the bad guys lose. You see the good girls win. But at the same time, I felt it was kind of unsatisfying. I don't know how I would have ended the movie per se, but there's a lot of directions she could have taken. It does subvert expectations. I will give it that. Again, it's not 100% satisfying. I don't know if there's another way she could have expanded upon it. I mean, the movie was fine at the length it was. You don't want to make it too much longer. But these kind of situations usually end differently in movies of this genre, especially when it comes to the lived experiences of women in a patriarchal society. Again, this is an attack on the patriarchal society during the post-Me Too movement. And they call these kind of movies good for her genre. That's what they're called. And if you remember, like Knives Out, The Menu, Poor Things, the endings are kind of similar to those kind of films as well. It does remind us that the Me Too movement started off real strong. Again, 2017 was like at the height of it. And again, that's what inspired Zoë Kravitz to kind of craft the screenplay a little bit here. You saw a lot of powerful Hollywood executives, powerful executives in all industries. The reality is, though, there is a lot of other men who were outed during this time. They laid low, said they were sorry, continued with their careers. They had no justice, which is really unfortunate. Some of them got their comeuppance somewhat, but not in the manner of speaking like they did in this film, that's for sure. And actually, there's a whole monologue near the end while Slater is holding Frida captive. I mean, Channing Tatum definitely emotes brilliantly. He says, "You can only say I'm sorry so many times before the words begin to lose meaning." The ending of Blink Twice explores this unfortunate reality and turns it on its head to kind of make it more satisfying than that. As much as a lot of people loved the more satisfying conclusion, it would have been more interesting, perhaps more realistic, to see him kind of slip away and make it kind of ambiguous that he might do it again. That's kind of the way I would have handled it, but I'm not Zoë Kravitz. This is all seen from the women's perspective, literally. Her vision obviously wanted a satisfying conclusion. I don't blame her. I mean, when somebody commits a horrible crime like raping, torturing, doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman, they definitely deserve to seek some kind of justice. But again, in reality, it doesn't always happen that way. For every Harvey Weinstein that gets taken down, there's like thousands of other ones that get away with it, which is unfortunate. But I would have, again, taken the more ambiguous approach here to the ending, and I think that would have made it much more satisfying. Again, not hitting on a high note, definitely wouldn't feel satisfying, but that's the way life is, and this would have been a great, great spotlight on how some of these executives, the ones that are in control, seem to get away with everything. They still do to this very day. Now, we don't hear much about the Me Too movement anymore. I mean, some of it was politicized on both sides, so you didn't really know who was right and who was wrong. Again, there was a lot of, some would call it like a witch hunt. We talked about this during the Witchfinders General. Back in the heyday of the Me Too movement, it seemed like it didn't matter who it was. There was actors, prominent actors that were named. Maybe they committed crimes, maybe they didn't, but it just seemed like stuff kind of manifested from like 20 or 30 years ago. Kind of seems suspect in some cases, but yeah, definitely, I mean, for every Harvey Weinstein that legit committed crimes, there's a lot of other big CEOs and powerful people that seem to get away with all of these crimes. Either it gets covered up or they have enough money to pay off law enforcement or the justice system. It's just unfortunate that these things happen, but I am really glad that Zoë Kravitz kind of put the spotlight on these things and made a satire out of it, because as much as this movie has thriller, horror, psychological revenge elements, it's also a satire on how society treats the rich, the CEO, and how a lot of them get away with all sorts of crimes, corruption. Again, this was more Me Too related, but this could go for any billionaire CEO conglomerate that gets away with crimes. But with all political stuff aside, Zoë Kravitz has crafted quite the unique and awesome film debut. I mean, I gave the film 4 stars out of 4. I, again, would have handled the ending a little bit differently. Seen through the eyes of not only a woman, but someone who was born into the entertainment industry and who grew up surrounded by powerful people. So as I kind of complained about the ending, I was not satisfied with it. This, again, from a unique perspective of someone who grew up in the industry and saw all of these powerful people do these horrible things. She probably saw some of it. I mean, she hasn't come out and said that she literally saw it, but you kind of get the idea that she somehow experienced some of it herself. Hopefully not, but I'm really glad that Zoë Kravitz, she had a lot to say, and she put it all into this beautifully crafted suspense, thriller, satire, horror film. I've read some reviews where some people have put that it's Get Out means Don't Worry, Darling. I don't want to compare it to any other horror suspense film. This one should stand on its own. Again, 100% not satisfying in my opinion, but I think if you love suspense, you love to have all these sorts of twists and turns, you want to be scared, you want to have a great satire, Zoë Kravitz checks all the boxes pretty nicely for the most part. I like the title Blink Twice. I mean, the working title was called Island when she started working on it back in 2017. Zoe kind of explained that the issues with the title formed with the MPA not wanting to put it on a poster or a billboard or a kiosk, or movie theaters not wanting to put it on a ticket, but also mentioned, interestingly enough, she said after researching it, women were offended by that word. And women seeing the title were saying, I don't want to see that movie, which is part of the reason I wanted to try and use the word, she said, which is trying to reclaim the word, not make it into something that we're so uncomfortable using. But we're not there yet, Zoe added, and I think that's something I have the responsibility as a filmmaker to listen to. Now, I'm not sure how much this movie will gross. I mean, it has a $20 million budget. I don't know if this will break even. They expect it to make like 7 or 8 million on opening weekend. It's got some pretty tough competition. It's doing okay right now in theaters, but I think this movie has cult classic written all over it. But if you put the word in the title like she originally wanted, she would have definitely sold less tickets, in my opinion. They actually filmed some of it in Mexico. So, I mean, you get a kind of an interesting background there, a beautiful background, I must say. I would love to see exactly where in Mexico she filmed this because, I mean, the location's awesome, at least from what I saw of it anyhow. Okay, I'm reading where it was filmed. I can't pronounce the names too well because my Mexican Spanish isn't that great, but it was filmed. The production occurred in Yucatan and Quintana Roo, Mexico. One website's consensus was a bold and memorable debut that thrust Zoë Kravitz into the turf of directors to watch. I agree 1,000% with that statement because even though I didn't give this film a full 5 stars, it's kind of rare for me to just willy-nilly give a movie 5 stars. She definitely gave 3.8 4-star movie, in my opinion. So see Blink Twice. It's in theaters. That's the way to see this movie on the big screen. If you're tired of all the sequels, the remakes, franchise, burnouts, if you feel the same way, a refreshing film debut from Zoë Kravitz, Blink Twice, is playing in theaters now. If you've seen it already, let me know. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Were you kind of on the fence about it? Join the discussion below. Comment. Let us know what you think of the movie Blink Twice, which is playing in theaters right now. And just remember, subscribe so you never miss an episode when we post here on YouTube. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Our handle is @Scared for Reels.